The war just escalated to its highest level yet, and Russia has been caught red-handed lying about a peace deal. The absolute shock began with a massive reversal. The US has now lifted its restriction on Ukraine using American ATACMS missiles to strike military targets inside Russia. Footage is circulating online confirming a successful strike on a Russian military base in Voronezh. The Kremlin's response to this is pure panic and political deceit. Just hours after the strike, Russian politicians began loudly claiming that there's a secret peace plan that had been agreed upon with the United States to force Ukraine to surrender Donbass. But here's the catch. It's all a lie. The whole operation is a desperate attempt by Russia's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, to manipulate the US and stop the next round of sanctions. This is the moment the war went from military escalation to outright information warfare. Let's start with Putin's worst nightmare. The Ukrainian military just said that they are now using American-made, American-supplied ATACMS missiles to strike military targets inside Russia. This has not happened before so openly, mainly because US has restricted Ukraine from using it inside Russia. Well, now it seems that restriction is gone, and Russians are not happy about it. Take a look at what Russian skies are sounding like. Footage circulating online confirms a successful strike carried out by Ukrainian missile on Baltimore military base in Voronezh. I knew Baltimore was crazy, I didn't know it was this crazy. The video shows deployment of cluster munition in midair above the airbase, indicating a successful detonation sequence during the strike. The 4 smoke trails visible at altitude mark the precise moment when the cluster warhead opened, releasing its submunitions, which then descended towards the target area. Now, Ukraine confirmed too that this was a successful strike, but unfortunately, I'm truly sad to report that the Russian Ministry of Defense says that they have shot down all 4 of the ATACMS missiles that Ukraine fired at the military base. And again, this is the same Ministry of Defense that says that they shoot down Ukrainian drones every single night, even though we see the refineries going up in flames. But then again, why would they lie now, right? Well, you know that situation, and I'm sure you've been in this, when you lie too much sometimes and you accidentally end up exposing yourself? Well, that's exactly what happened here. You see, after the Ministry of Defense put out the claim that they took down all 4 ATACMS missiles, the Russian media went snooping around to look for the debris of the attack. And when they published these pictures online, there was something very interesting that even Russian propagandists noticed themselves. And this is what they were saying. You see, these pictures show ATACMS missiles hulls, which are without warhead and without any characteristics of damage from air defense systems. This looks like an ATACMS hull that was properly deployed. It doesn't look like something that was shot down by a Russian air defense. And you see, the Russian Ministry of Defense would have known this if they had any competent military commanders. Let me explain what I mean. You know Russian air defenses like the S-300s and S-400s? Well, those interceptors would actually engage a ballistic missile target at a much higher altitude than what Russia is claiming. They are claiming that the video that we see on the screen and the smoke that we see in the Russian sky is actually the Russian air defense taking out the missiles, when that's not how Russian air defenses work at all. And on top of this, in this video, the audio clearly captures cluster munition deploying. It doesn't capture air defenses hitting a missile. And again, it's important to point out that this footage was recorded and published by residents of the city. So I don't think they're doctoring this image to make Russia look bad. Now, what would you guys do if you're caught in a lie? Well, you know, you double down, you triple down, and you go for it on the 4th down. Well, that's exactly what the Russian Ministry of Defense is doing. They are taking it a step further. To prove that they are the second strongest military in the world, they said that they didn't just stop all 4 ATACMS. They actually hit back at the launch site and killed all the crew members who actually launched these ATACMS missiles. On top of this, to back up their statement this time, Russia published a video of their strike. The video shows the strike happening like the Ministry of Defense in Russia promised. Only problem is that the video is actually from 14 months ago. How do we know that it's from 14 months ago? Well, when you do a reverse search, you find out that it was the Russian Ministry of Defense itself that posted it 14 months ago. Now, many people online are laughing about this and saying that Russians just got caught lying again. But I don't think that's the case at all. What this video actually shows us is that the crew that launched the missiles 2 days ago were actually killed by Russia 14 months ago. So, if that's not the second strongest military in the world, I don't know what is. Who shot the missile if the crew was dead? Wait, who's asking that? You know Putin has nukes. I promise that wasn't me, I'm being honest. It was actually Russian propagandists who were asking the same question. Here's the proof. This Russian Telegram channel is really upset that the Russian Ministry of Defense got caught. He goes on to say, it's hard to say why our Ministry of Defense released old footage of the defeat. How many such scams, such mistakes are contained in other reports and statements? Oh my god, he's asking questions he should not be asking. But of course, we would like to hear some clear explanations from some clear official persons. You really have to know how to screw up like this. It's never too late to admit your mistakes and not do it again. I don't think Russia believes in admitting mistakes, at least not the leaders they have right now. Putin is putting up statues of Stalin again, saying he was a great leader. So yeah, talking about lying though, it was a hell of a day yesterday. Apparently, the United States and Russia have agreed on a peace deal, and that's coming from a Russian source. On top of that, they claim that there's no need to get Ukraine involved in this. So, yeah, definitely huge news. So let me give you the whole details. So, this whole thing started yesterday morning when we started seeing reporting that a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia would be reached as soon as this week. This definitely sounded interesting to say the least. Then we got this update from Axios. Now pay attention to that comment from Steve Witkoff, because we'll come back to that. But first let's look at what this update was. In this article, Axios claims that the US envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev have agreed to a draft of a peace plan. According to the Russian envoy, who actually talked to the reporter for this article, he says that this would address the Ukrainian conflict, but also restore US-Russia ties and address Russia's security concerns. Now, I actually want to remind everyone that there were no drones or missiles flying into Russia until Putin started this invasion. So, I think it's Putin who can easily address the Russian security concerns. But anyways, I'm making too much sense for Russians to understand. Getting back to the article though, this reporting shocked a lot of people because it seemed like that US was pushing this plan on Ukrainians, all the while Ukraine was never actually involved in coming up with this peace plan. The article made it seem like that US had given into every single Russian demand and now they were trying to force them onto Ukrainians. But again, I want to emphasize that the only person who was actually quoted in this article was a Russian propagandist. So yeah, we should take his word with a grain of salt. Well, soon after this, Financial Times came out with even more details about the said plan. According to the FT, the plan included cutting Ukrainian army in half, giving up certain weapons, giving up Donbass, and of course, Zelensky was not happy about this. When I looked at the article, there were some comments from an anonymous Russian official, but I think we can all guess who that anonymous official was. Our good old friend Kirill. But this actually kept going because just minutes after the Financial Times report, we got more details from The Economist. The Economist adds that Russia is actually asking Ukraine to decrease its army by 2.5x, so meaning the Ukrainian army would be 40% of what it is right now. On top of this, Russia does not want any foreign troops in Ukraine, no foreign diplomatic planes, which is an interesting demand. I wonder why Russians want that. Maybe they want to continue firing those ballistic missiles that are destroying Ukrainian apartments. But anyways, on top of this, Russia wants to ban Ukraine's ability to have long-range weapons that can reach Moscow and St. Petersburg. And of course, Russia wants Ukraine to give up Donbass. More and more we learned about this whole plan, it seems less like a peace plan and more like a Ukrainian surrender. But again, just to remind everyone, most of these details are likely coming from Kirill Dmitriev. This is where we go back to the original tweet. Because when this whole thing started, Steve Witkoff actually accidentally replied to the original reporting saying they must have gotten this from K meaning Kirill. So it seems like Witkoff was trying to send this as a message to someone because he quickly deleted it. Now this is where I want to provide some context. At the end of October, Kirill actually came to the United States. He went on a whole national tour where he went on pretty much every single news station and kept repeating how Russian economy was not suffering at all and sanctions are not hurting the economy at all. Even though he came here just a day after President Trump announced his new sanctions. So yeah, he's definitely letting everyone know that the sanctions are not a big deal at all. But in between spreading misinformation on US news channels, he also met with Steve Witkoff in Miami. And apparently they had a 3-day session hammering out this peace plan. And it seems the details that are coming out is something they agreed on during this 3-day marathon. Now, personally speaking, I'm not the biggest fan of Steve Witkoff to begin with, and I'm sure that feeling is mutual. He's probably not the biggest fan of me either. But Steve Witkoff has made some crazy comments about Ukraine in the past. He actually doesn't know all the territories that he's talking about, and he's also saying that all the territories that Russia wants, Ukraine should just give up, because apparently these are part of Russian constitution, so Ukraine has no claim to them. Which makes no sense, by the way. But yeah, based on his past comments, I can believe that Steve Witkoff was maybe involved in coming up with these points, but it doesn't seem like anyone else in the Trump administration actually agrees with all this, at least based on the information we have so far. In fact, later in the evening yesterday, State Secretary Marco Rubio made a statement that kind of makes it seem like that this is not a US plan that the US administration is pushing on Ukraine. This is what he said. Ending a complex and deadly war such as the one in Ukraine requires an extensive exchange of serious and realistic ideas, and achieving a durable peace will require both sides to agree to difficult but necessary concessions. That is why we are and will continue to develop a list of potential ideas for ending this war based on input from both sides of this conflict. Now, many people saw this statement and they're saying that this is really a statement where Marco Rubio is trying to distance the administration from what the reporting has been, meaning US is not trying to push this plan on Ukraine. In fact, this is just like one of the plans that US is working on. Now, what was more shocking was the comments coming out of the Kremlin. This is where it's important to remember that Kirill Dmitriev is actually not part of the Kremlin. He's trying to become the foreign minister of Russia, and that's why his wife is the one actually who's trying to push out Lavrov. But that's a story for a different video. For now, Putin's spokesperson Peskov actually said that Russia has no idea of the peace plan that the US media is reporting on. So it seems this may be more of a Witkoff-Dmitriev plan and less of a US-Russia plan at all. Now, talking about Kirill Dmitriev, I'm not going to make an argument as to why we shouldn't be paying attention to him. I'll just let this statement from Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent make my argument for me.
Is in the United States, because sanctions were lifted on him to conduct meetings here, including with President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff. When you say he's a propagandist, do you mean that we shouldn't listen to anything he says?
What do you think is going to happen to him if he goes back home and says the good Lord? You know, what if he had said on TV, this is terrible. President Trump just did the right thing. This is a maximum pressure campaign that's going to work. Margaret, what's he going to say? Of course he's going to say this. If you go through and look at every Russian talking point, they seem to use the word, we have immunized the economy against this. Well, they haven't immunized the economy. Their oil earnings are down 20% year over year. I would suspect that this could take them down another 20 or 30%. So, you know, again, that President Trump was criticized for not doing enough. He takes this bold maneuver, and then you're quoting a Russian propagandist.
Now, over the last few weeks, a couple of our videos have gotten demonetized and restricted. Probably because YouTube doesn't like some of the clips that we have shown from the Ukrainian front lines. YouTube considers war clips not advertiser friendly, so they just restrict the video. This is why we created our own platform, Basics Insider. We built it from scratch, so we have no restrictions. That way we can provide you with uncensored coverage of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening around the world. So, if you're someone who's interested in stuff like this, if you're someone who wants to support independent journalism, then definitely go check out our website by going to basicsinsider.com. You can also click the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen. By joining, you'll be able to watch tons of content that we cannot upload here on YouTube. But on top of that, you'll be supporting our channel and supporting our coverage. So thank you so much. My name is Sam, and I'll see you guys in the next one.